Since you're MC.
Since I'm the MC. Okay, welcome back, everybody. We're going to be doing a panel here, moderated by Tim, who I'm sure everyone knows by now. This is the packages panel, all about Wagtail packaging and Wagtail ecosystem and all that good stuff. So, yeah, quick introduction. This is Tim Allen. I'm Vince Salvino. This is Jacob Topp-Mugglestone. And we have Will Barton. Take it away, Tim.
Thank you. Thanks everybody for coming. Thanks for coming for the whole event. This has been fantastic. And I just wanted to start by saying what packages mean to me, because sometimes we call them packages, sometimes we call them modules. But basically to me, what a package is in the Python community is anything you can pip install. So if you have made it so it can be pip installable, then it's a package. That's the definition I'm working with in 2024. Even though that might not be technically 100% correct, I think that's the easiest way to understand it. If you can pip install something, it's a package to me. And there are different ways that you can start developing packages. So for example, you can pip install something from Git. So you can do git plus SSH or git plus HTTP and install something directly from GitHub without actually putting it into the Python package index. And I wanted to give a quick shout out. Yesterday, E. Durbin was here, and they're an old friend, but they're also one of the few people who work the ultimate thankless job of managing the Python packaging authority. So the Python packaging index is when you type pip install Wagtail, it's hosted on the Python package index, or PyPI. And that is run by the Python Packaging Authority, which is E. Durbin and several other volunteers who put in a lot of hard work to put out new versions of pip, to put new features up for package maintainers like us to have an easier life, and to make sure that the criticality of Python can really not be overstated. And I think it's something that we don't really appreciate all the time. My friend Dustin Ingram posted a great picture a couple of years ago of half of the Python core team crossing a busy intersection at the same time. And every Fortune 500 company's insurance rate should have gone through the roof then, because that's an amazing amount of risk right there. And we don't appreciate a lot of the work that really goes into making it so it's reliable, that when every supply chain in the world, when somebody does a pip install on it, and every Fortune 500 company has Python somewhere in it, that it just works. And it's reliable, and it's been astoundingly reliable. And when I first started with Django, my first major feature that I worked on with Django was, if you've ever started a new Django project and you've seen the rocket ship, that was one of my contributions with a fellow colleague here at Wharton. And one of the Django core team at the time was sort of shepherding me through the project. And he had this very wise advice when he was asked, what is Django? And he pointed out that Django is a community first, an ecosystem second, and a pretty cool web framework third. And in that same order, I think we can say, Python is a community, an ecosystem, and a programming language. And Wagtail is a community and an ecosystem, and the best CMS on the planet. I'm not biased at all in that. But the point of that is to say, we're going to be talking really about, we have the community here at the conference, but we're really going to be talking about that ecosystem. So that ecosystem of packages, the secret sauce, the Wagtail packages that allow you to take there's so much for Wagtail, but extend it further for specific needs. So with that, that's enough out of me. I want to give everybody a brief moment to introduce themselves and talk about some of the packages they maintain that allow you to extend Wagtail further, starting with Vince.
Yeah, so one of our main packages is previously known as CodeRed CMS, but now Wagtail CRX. And basically that is, people often think it's a fork or a distribution of Wagtail, but really it's just a bunch of extra stuff pre-built in Wagtail that you can pip install, get up and running. But then we also do Wagtail SEO, Wagtail Cache, which I highly encourage you to use. It will, both of those are kind of necessities in Wagtail at this point, and then we maintain a few others as well through CodeRed. So yeah, that's I haven't really contributed much to Wagtail core, but contribute through the packages.
Yeah, so Jacob, I maintain a few. So probably the one most people have used of mine is things like Wagtail content import, but I also kind of jointly maintain a few others, including Wagtail transfer, which lets you transfer content between different Wagtail instances and keep those instances connected, so keep track of what content you've transferred in the past. Wagtail content import itself, as the name suggests, lets you import content, but primarily from Google Docs, but also there's some Word features in there as well. There's a bunch of there's some smaller ones and some ones like Wagtail Draftail Anchors, which it was fun to see get a little shout out earlier. And I've been kind of jointly involved in maintaining some others at various points, not right now, but I've jumped in on Wagtail Review, a few others along the way.
So I'm Will. So at CFPB we maintain collectively several packages. We have Django flags, which is a feature flag library for Django, and then Wagtail flags, which puts a Wagtail UI on the front of that. We have Wagtail tree model admin, which is based on the deprecated model admin that creates a kind of a tree-shaped structure in the UI based on foreign key relations between models. We have Wagtail sharing, Wagtail inventory, the Wagtail content audit package that we shared earlier. Yeah, so we have several of those packages, and I want to emphasize that for us, it's a team effort for all of those.
I think we've probably represented like the top 10 Wagtail packages up here. So.
Probably, unfortunately. Well, that leads into my next question. So two of the biggest, most popular packages that I've maintained were actually started by somebody else, who then got me involved and then ran for the hills. Alex Gleason, some of you may remember Alex, but that was Wagtail Font Awesome and Wagtail Error Pages, which have sort of since been subsumed by Wagtail Core having better font support. But how do you get people interested in getting involved and working on packages with you, and maybe make a pitch for getting more people involved?
Yeah. So for us, it's kind of, we kind of latch on to Wagtail Core itself in a sense. So oftentimes people will look, how can I get involved in Wagtail? And it's kind of a daunting code base. I mean, it's pretty big, it's pretty mature. Some parts of it are a bit intricate. And a lot of times, we can point people to a package and say, well, this package is a little bit easier to get started with. It's less involved than Wagtail. And a lot of times contributors come through that as well, starting with a package. So in a sense, we can kind of direct people from Wagtail Core as well.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree. It's definitely a much more approachable starting point than Wagtail Core in many ways. There are differences. Wagtail Transfer, I always feel, has a particularly high barrier to entry, just because it involves connecting multiple Wagtail instances, and that dev environment setup is a pain, even when you're used to it. But I think, cynically, make a package that does something really cool, and then have it not do something that someone desperately wants it to do. Or, if you're being really bad, break it on the next Wagtail update. So definitely don't do these things. Don't do these things in real life. But like, the best way to get people invested is to have that initial kind of rush of engagement, to be solving some cool problem. But obviously, you don't have time to solve everyone's cool problem, and they'll have something that latches onto yours, and you can get them involved that way. The other thing I'll say is, like, it's really nice to be part of larger organizations. So that could be, an agency like Torchbox. So we take on a lot of packages, and I'm really grateful to our support team who've stepped in to do like Wagtail upgrades on a number of my packages, and I've just code reviewed them, which is great because they're things I was going to get to, but they got done for me first, and I could just be the reviewer, which is really nice to do. But also things like the Wagtail organization or even Wagtail Nest, things where you've got a network of people to call on. So when you're busy around the time of a Wagtail update, or you've got someone else to call on, someone else has that motivation to come in and help out. So yeah, that's the public and the organization side, I think.
Yeah. I think too, it's hard to know necessarily what you find, like you're solving a particular problem for yourself usually, right? You're not thinking, what does someone else need out of the open source world? And so a lot of times it's hard to know, this thing I've made, is that going to be useful to someone else? I think one way to get others involved is doing exactly this, like coming to spaces like Wagtail Space, to Django Cons, in community settings, and sharing what you've done, so that, like, to use our example from today, like our what we think of as really specific content problems that we're struggling with might be useful, or might, like, the solutions we've come up to those might be useful to others. And in like the conversations we've had, that's the case. So it's like, back to what you said at the beginning, Tim, it's like the community, like being part of the package ecosystem is also, I think, being part of the community and just interacting with people and talking to them helps to get others.
Yeah, on that note, with the human element to it, as a maintainer, you're often very spread thin, and it's very easy, you know, people like to file issues on GitHub, and it's very easy to just say, if you wanted to implement it yourself, go away, you know?
I never do it on GitHub, I just hit you up on Slack.
Yeah. But you
I'm
know,
the worst kind of
it's
person.
easy to get overwhelmed as a maintainer, so sometimes you have to step back and say, okay, now let me be nice to this person, I'm not gonna be mean, and
Is it helpful when I just type Vince, it's broken?
yeah. But you know, but being you know, welcoming in that way can definitely kind of turn people on to your package. For example, someone might ask about a feature, and rather than just saying, if you wanted to implement it yourself, it's open source, leave me alone, you know, you can just say, well, you know, I thought about it, and I thought about implementing it this certain way. Maybe you could go in that direction. And a lot of times the person might come back a month or two later having implemented it based on that initial feedback that you gave them. So that's another way for maintainers especially, is just, you know, remember to try and give people a little bit of direction rather than just you know, ignoring it or something. That's usually the easy first response, a couple sentences and you're off. You can give them something to work on.
Jacob dropped Wagtail Nest really quickly, and I don't know, I'm pretty sure that, you know, anybody who's watching this on YouTube in the future is gonna have no idea what we're talking. How many people in this room know what Wagtail Nest is? 1, 2, so maybe like 10 to 15% of the people in this room who came to a Wagtail conference know what Wagtail Nest is. So let's take a moment and talk about Wagtail Nest. Wagtail Nest is a group collaborative effort for us to maintain packages in the Wagtail ecosystem as a team. So none of us are doing it alone. And if anybody is looking to get more involved with Wagtail and the Wagtail ecosystem and, you know, improve your coding chops with some of the, you know, top software engineers in the world, Wagtail Nest is a great way to get involved. We need more people to help maintain projects. I was just, you know, talking before here that one of my major goals for sprints this year is I have a bunch of Wagtail projects where I am the sole maintainer. That means if I win the lottery or get hit by a bus or whatever, or abducted by aliens, those packages, you know, you're gonna have to go through a whole process with PyPI to sort of.
See, when you win the lottery, you're not just going to spend the rest of your life maintaining Python packages.
Probably not. Probably not. No.
I realize we haven't gotten to the joys part of this, but isn't that like fulfilling?
Yes, fulfilling. No, I'm going to be too busy running conferences, you see. So, but Wagtail Nest for everybody out there it's similar to, you may have heard of Jazz Band for Django, which is a collaborative group of people that come together. And now our friend Tim Schilling is starting Django Commons. So there are several of these efforts to sort of create a group that together maintains several packages, which also, you know, would allow you to kind of get out of the boredom of always being locked into one, or share your specific piece of expertise across multiple packages. Like if I go down a deep dive today and learn about a new feature, like if I'm converting Black and Flake and iSort all to rough at once, maybe I could do that for multiple packages while it's fresh in my mind. So there are a bunch of options for anybody here or anybody out there who is interested in getting involved in contributing to open source. Wagtail Nest is a great place to get started, I think. Has anybody would anyone like to add anything to Wagtail Nest beyond, I'm sure Cohen is somewhere smiling right now.
Yeah, nothing from me. I think that was a great summary.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we can move on. You know, who was here yesterday, the work they have done at the Python Packaging Authority that I mentioned earlier over the past couple of years to improve the experience for people like us has really been impressive. Like I remember when I first started in Python, there wasn't a pip release for 4 or 5 years. Speaking, you know, we'll get onto developer burnout, but you know, it had been basically maintained by one person in the most thankless job you can imagine, with something that we mentioned, the criticality earlier. But you know, over the past few years, I've become a huge fan of tools like Setup Tools SCM is a wonderful thing for package maintainers. where instead of having to make a completely separate configuration file saying these are the files I want in my package, it just introspects your Git repository and says, these are the files I want in my package. So you're not doing the same exact thing twice, and it respects git ignore. Are there any other of these new goodies that you've seen in the Python packaging authority over the past couple of years you'd want to mention that have been particularly handy?
Yeah, I'll bring one up, and it's not so much a goodie as just Python kind of evolving, and that is the general use of pyproject.toml. So toml, some people are still flame warring over that, but it's included in Python now as of 3.12, so there's no need for flame wars. But you know, we all kind of know, anyone who's built a package has probably used setup.py in some capacity. But basically, Python includes everything you need to build a package at this point, and you can define it in your pyproject.toml. From there, I think it's part of setup tools or something, but it all kind of works under the hood. You don't have to think about it. So I've done one package that way, and there's like so much less to configure. You put a couple things in your pyproject.toml, and that's it. You run a command, and it builds it, and it publishes it, and it does everything. So you could have a package with one single file, and that one single file could be a pyproject.toml. So it makes it very easy.
Yeah, it can also handle your requirements, your tool configuration. So if you want to set your standards for code formatting and linting, you can do that all in one file now instead of having like 8 different configuration files throughout your package. So even if you're not looking to publish to PyPI, it's now best practice to have a pyproject.toml at the root of any Django project.
Yeah.
So instead of having separate requirements files and things like that, you can just put it all in this one file, and it's standardized, and it's come really a long way.
Yeah, and like you said, Tim, I also encourage people to do that because a really common scenario in like industry is that you need to have you need a private package. You don't want it on PyPI. It has your business logic or something, right? So you don't necessarily need to make a quote unquote package. You can put that in a Python file, add a pyproject.toml, and then you can pip install that in your private, proprietary project without having to think about PyPI or anything like that. So.
Very boring answer, but I have to second the pyproject.toml. I think that's the only one that's like I've really caught up with, and it is really useful, and particularly makes it much easier to standardize that configuration for all your different tools, which I really value. I'm sure there's more to catch up on, and it's definitely not from the package deal, but I'm also quite excited about things like rough combining all these different linters. I haven't got any of my projects yet. Very excited to do it and cut down those CI pipelines.
Yeah, we've started doing using rough for all the things in cf.gov and then in a few of our other packages, and it's awesome. The one thing that I've found delightful recently is PyPI Trusted Publishing from GitHub. Simplifies a lot of the kind of boilerplate that we put in repositories to do the uploads to PyPI. Like there's that combination of the Trusted Publishing, GitHub Actions, and then the PyPI's GitHub Action to do that has replaced a lot of the sort of thing that you don't like maintaining, which is great. We just need org support on PyPI, but I know it's coming someday.
It's on the way.
It's coming.
So it seems like a small problem that they'll get to one of these.
And
there's no contention in the Python community about how it should be implemented either. So
right.
Easy as pie, right? Easy as pie, PY. Yes. So
great.
Well, that does lead in. You mentioned a lot of the tedium and a lot of the I just don't feel like it today. Like I sometimes hear that teenager in the back of my head, but I don't wanna. It's like, okay, new versions of Wagtail is coming out. I know I've got 3 packages that I need to get compatible, but I don't wanna. We've all faced developer fatigue and potential burnout. Because sometimes it's a very thankless job maintaining these packages. What recommendations do you all have for avoiding that eventual burnout that might come with maintaining a package and ditching it on me and running for the hills?
Yeah. I would say the biggest thing is don't be too ambitious. Kind of take it slow, because when you start doing a package, it's really exciting. Like if you're, everyone in this room is like really into this kind of stuff. We're all nerds here, and it's like you make your first Python package and you're like, wow, this is cool. It's on PyPI, it's on GitHub. People are starring my repository, and people are filing issues and saying, I'm using this in my such and such project, and you're like, wow, this is everywhere. It's really growing, and that's really exciting. So sometimes you get a little hit of that, and you want to start say, I want to do this feature and I want to do this feature, and at the end of the day, whatever you build into your package, you're going to have to maintain forever, or until you win the lottery. So, just kind of think about that and take it slow. And a lot of stuff that we started doing in the very beginning, we've kind of rolled back a little bit, or deprecated some things here and there, or tried to get some stuff kind of merged into Wagtail core itself, just to lessen our own burden. And that's made it so much easier to maintain. So, just don't try to over-engineer it when you're starting.
I think for me, obviously, I can go best advice, second best, and third best. And I think best advice is dump it on Tim and run for the hills. If you're forcing me to go with the second and third best solutions, second one really is get other people involved. As we said, there are now organizations like Wagtail Nest, but also might be people at your company, there might be people who are just using it that you can get involved. And third kind of leads into that. Lower the barrier to entry. Like anything you're doing to make it easier for other people to get involved, to make it easier for other people to know the direction the package should be going, so that they're not throwing completely random solutions at the wall. Anything you're doing to add documentation, so it's clear how people should get started developing, and if you're doing with tests. That stuff can be really boring, but it is multiple. Your effort there, boring as it might be, is multiplied exponentially by the fact that other people can now help you out, rather than it all being on you. So I would say, put that small bit of effort into making your package approachable, lower the barrier to entry, and that effort is multiplied. And particularly, if you want to get involved with mentoring people through features, that's really helpful. I've always encouraged people to get involved with Google Summer of Code, because you put a bit of effort in as a mentor, and don't get me wrong, it is a big effort, but that effort is massively multiplied by someone else enthusiastic coming onto the project and doing a lot of cool things. Community really.
Great point about the tests and stuff, like having a little boilerplate test that someone can copy and paste and change. Like the first time I got a pull request that had a test, and they had the feature, the tests, and the docs, I was like, oh my god, this is so nice.
Was that me?
It was too long ago to remember. But yeah, so just give someone a test and a doc and be like, here, copy this, and they'll do it.
I also think a little bit about something you said a minute ago, Vince, was about the time commitment. And getting an issue and it's not working for someone, and most everything we're talking about are libraries, right? That we've created a library that someone else is going to use, and most of the time, the times they're going to interact with those are probably when they're installing it for the first time, and because they have a particular need and this seems to fit it, and if it does, that's great, they move on. And then they don't interact with it again until they need to update.
4 years later.
Right. And it's like, those are both moments in which our libraries are potentially blocking them from achieving the actual thing they're trying to do, right? And so I think there's a degree of empathy that helps in those moments, which is exactly what you were talking about. And I think that also extends to us, because I know a lot of my fatigue and burnout comes when there's a new Wagtail release, and then there's a question on in the package channel on the Wagtail Slack of hey, this doesn't work with Wagtail sharing or something like that, right? And it's crap, I gotta go. There is a need out there, and I feel bad that a library that I'm responsible for is blocking someone else, right? So there's that degree of encouraging someone else to help and all the things that we can do ahead of that. But I think there's also just allowing yourself to realize that, it's okay. We are humans. We'll get to it when we can. We can help others do what we need to. But at the end of the day, we're putting open source out there because it's useful to someone else. And that's a moment in which it is useful to someone else if you just did a thing. And that's hard,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah,
Yeah,
one of the
that
things,
doesn't answer the question. That just
Yeah,
explains the
but,
feeling. But
one thing that we did that I think was a really big help and is kind of, so we advocated to the Wharton School and specifically our division for time to work on open source. And at the bottom of every README, and I'll just read it, we say, this package was created by the staff of Wharton Research Data Services. We are thrilled that the Wharton School allows us a certain amount of time to contribute to open source projects. So it gives them a feather in their cap,
Yes.
encourages them to allow us to participate in this, allows us to reach out to other staff members and say, hey, this will look good on your performance appraisal. This is a strategy we can all use with our workplaces. But then we continue, we add features as they are necessary for our projects and try to keep up with issues and pull requests as best we can. Due to the constraints of our time and our full-time jobs, feature requests without a pull request may not be implemented, but we are always open to new ideas and grateful for contributions from our users. So right up front, we say, hey, it's wonderful you're here. We're glad you're using it. We'll do what we can, but we have full-time jobs too. So it's not our full-time job to make this work for you. It's our full-time job to make it work for us. And if that also works for you, setting those expectations up front and giving a feather in the cap to the employer to encourage them to allow us to continue to work on open source on their time while they're paying us can go a long way. And it's not a hard sell for employers typically when you point out like how much they're getting free from Wagtail and Django and so on, how much developer happiness and employee happiness they're getting by letting this all happen. You know, that's a conversation that can happen with your employer and really go a long way that I know a lot of people haven't had. And it can make you look like a leader and an advocate. That, you know, it may look good for your resume on your next performance appraisal if you're the one who brought sort of an open source consciousness to an organization. There was a real aha moment within our organization. You know, we maintain Wagtail code block, which is syntax highlighting for Wagtail. So when you type in the admin side, you see real-time syntax highlighting, and on the flip side, it's just a front-end shim for Prism.js. But you know, that's because, you know, the website that Ryan's team over there maintains has thousands and thousands of code snippets in multiple languages on how to access our data. Our users use it every day. There's a lot of value there. We also maintain the Django REST framework Excel endpoint converter, which we started getting some pretty major pull requests that allowed like for full colorization and templating. And when our boss was like, wait, you mean we can now put all of our branding in every spreadsheet that's downloaded from the 300,000 Excel spreadsheets that are downloaded from our platform every year, and it didn't cost me a dime in time or money? And we were like, He's like, I like this open source thing. You know, it's easy to point back to things like that. And, you know, share the release notes with your bosses on the new features you're getting that will save the staff time. You know, the comments section in Wagtail, the new editor features. You know, it's an easy sell.
It's a great point, Tim, and it's like, you know, you kind of have to come back to the question sometimes of like, why are we even doing this? You know, why does open source even exist? Is it just because we're all neurotic and we feel the need to, you know,
That's part of it.
to push code? Yeah, it is part of it. You know, is that but you know, the reality is, I think most open source, at least the bigger projects out there, they're promoting something, or they're helping you use, you know, they're helping you use a paid service, or they're promoting a service, or they're promoting a company or an institution at some point. And you know, and that's great because you get something for free in exchange. You know, the publisher gets a little bit of visibility. So you know, I encourage people to support. If you're using an open source project and you really like it, you know, say thank you to a maintainer. But then there's other reasons why you would do it, and a lot of times it is simply out of the kindness of someone's heart, and you can't forget that. And I want to give a little shout out to a pip package that I would say 50% of all Django sites use, and that is MySQL client. So you're either using PG, PsychoPG
or
2 or
PsychoPG
3
3 now.
which is just PsychoPG. So you're either using that or you're using MySQL client for pretty much everybody. And MySQL client is maintained by one person. And I learned that the hard way because I was fixing a bug in MySQL client, and you know, the maintainer was like, I'm out of the country for a couple months or something. It's gonna, I'll get to it in the next release. And it was like, it was a really long kind of lag time. And I'm not complaining about that because it's literally one person doing it purely to be helpful. They're not profiting off of it in any way, shape, or form. And it's kind of scary. It's like
same with
meme
PsychoBG.
the building block.
Shout out to Daniela Veraza, who maintains
Yeah,
PsychoBG.
yeah.
And PyODBC is Mike Kleehammer. So the fact that we know these individuals' names is a little terrifying.
Yeah.
That, like, the criticality of database connectivity in the Python world is sort of hyper concentrated. And Marius, the Django fellow who just retired, also does the Oracle connection pretty much as a sort of single project covered by his employer. So if you're really into database engines, do we have an opportunity for you?
I think about that too, in terms of like creating useful packages. And one way to avoid burnout maybe is to avoid being that one little person on the XKCD that we're all familiar with, that has created something so useful, everything else is built on it.
Yeah.
Well, the left pad story. Who here, does everybody here know the left pad story?
Yeah.
Okay, so left pad was a Node.js package that just simply removed padded the characters to the left side of a string. You could add 3 spaces to the left of a string, or 3 zeros, or whatever you want. It was used by every Node.js as a dependency package, as a dependency of a dependency of a dependency, or somewhere in the supply chain. Due to a trademark dispute, the maintainer of it pulled it out of the Node.js NPM index, as is his right. And every node deployment in the world started failing. So to give you an idea of the criticality, if you want to look up the Node.js left pad story, it's another reason why it is very good that everything in the Python community is owned by a nonprofit rather than a for-profit company, which was part of the dispute as well. So that's another reason to thank your Python packaging authority people too. So we're almost at time, but I wanted to also say, we've talked a little bit about burnout and stuff like that, but I also wanted to, I played with Legos as a kid, and I loved the creative process, and I loved putting things together, and I loved building Legos, but I also loved that moment of show and tell where I get to say, look what I made. And there is a lot of joy to maintaining open source packages. It's all not doom and gloom. There's a lot of joy and a lot of fun to it, and I wanted to give everybody a chance to share some of the joy that you've gotten from maintaining packages.
Yeah, a lot of the joy comes from when you know that you actually helped someone, and a lot of times we only get the negative feedback, right? You get all these issues filed, and you never really hear or know if anyone's even using something. So whenever you get that feedback, really for me, and someone's like, oh, thanks, I just used this in my company, and my such and such user is like really happy now, and it made their job so much easier. And it's like, oh, that really, you actually impacted somebody's life in some way. And that always is a moving thing. So once again, on the flip side, if you are using a package, I would encourage you to open an issue and just say, thank you for making this, because I guarantee you that will make the maintainer's day.
Yeah, I agree. It's lovely to find out someone is using something, particularly if you don't suspect particularly anyone's using it. So, that lovely little moment of joy earlier when I found out that, draft anchors, which is a package I threw together, quite quickly to solve a problem, was actually helping you avoid some really hairy, nasty HTML. So I'm like, that's great. But if I'm honest, my greatest joy of packages, and this is going to sound a little bloodthirsty, is when they die. And I mean this in the sense that they die for a good reason. They die because their niche is now fulfilled by something else, because they're fulfilled normally by Wagtail getting better. Mm-hmm. So we're no longer solving a problem that editors have with Wagtail, but because this is in Wagtail itself, and it means that way more people are getting to use this than they would have in the package. And that is honestly the greatest joy in package maintenance for me, seeing that final step, or a package become fundamentally less useful because most of the problems themselves. So things like, didn't create this myself, but I mentored the GSOC project that created it. the Wagtail Streamfield migration toolkit. When that went into Wagtail core, I was overjoyed, because even though it meant that almost no one would be installing the package anymore, because people could finally solve what had been quite a hairy problem in Wagtail, now much more easily. And this has happened in other places. It's happened with Wagtail Review. It's happened with the short-lived kind of Wagtail comments front-end package I created while we were kind of working on commenting. But yeah, I'm really, really happy.
I didn't know that was you. We used that.
Oh, nice.
I'd also, a little history lesson for everyone. Django migrations was started as a package back in the day.
South.
South. Django did not have migrations, and it was absolutely mind-bending to try and change anything on any of your models. So some of the best features of tools that we use all started out as packages.
Yeah, I think my answer would be a variation on the theme here. Like, I enjoy solving interesting problems, and I enjoy creating useful software. And when I can do both and solve an interesting problem in a way that's useful to somebody else, that's the ballgame, right? That's everything.
Yeah, and just for a person, I mean, most people here know I'm in recovery from drug and alcohol addiction, and I've been involved for many years running a website for local recovery here in Philadelphia that runs on Wagtail, Code Red extension, CRX, Wagtail CRX. And I've had people come up to me and say their lives have been saved by having this technology available so they can find meetings easily when they need them. So if you don't think it makes a difference in people's lives, it really, really does. And there are people across the world who are using open source technology for, really life and death important stuff. And when you take a step back, we have a lot of fun here. We do a lot of cool creative things, and we do a lot of stuff for work. But when you consider that, it's being used for really critical things in the recovery community, for one. I'm not the only one story there. There's a lot of good being done out there. And Wagtail was kind of spun out by Torchbox to do good for the world, to work with companies that are doing good for the world. And being involved in a community and an ecosystem like that has that ethos behind it has always been kind of extra special to me. So, any final words? Or shall we?
I will end on, if you have ever thought about creating a Wagtail package, please do, because we need more of them. And question?
Not a question, but just a shout out to this package called, just under the Wagtail org, called Cookie Cutter Wagtail package.
Oh yeah, Cookie
Cutter Wagtail, yes.
I made it 4 years ago and didn't get much attention, but I think it's been updated. And at the Wagtail Space in London last week, Cohen made a really cool little package, like a simple version of Wagtail Translate, and he showed it off in one of the lightning talks. But actually, most of his lightning talk was about how quick it was for him to do it by using this package. So it gives you all the GitHub tooling, CI, the PyPy stuff. If you're going to make a Wagtail package, which of course you should, then that's definitely the place to start.
Yeah, and for anyone who's not familiar with Cookie Cutter is just a tool that basically generates a boilerplate files for your project. So you don't actually have to use Cookie Cutter to make your package. It just kind of gives you a starting point.
Yeah, it's pretty nice. I believe it's using Flip now, which is, it's been fun.
So, awesome. Okay, thanks, Tim. We have probably a little bit of time for some lightning talk. Oh, one more question.
How can we get involved with Wagtail Nest?
How can we get involved with Wagtail Nest?
I think the best way is to probably hop onto the Slack and volunteer in the channels, and people will pick you up and help get you involved and get you access to Wagtail Nest.
There is a Wagtail Nest channel.
Yes.
Great.
So the Wagtail Nest channel is on the Slack. I think is probably the best place to start. Great question.
Yeah, and I know Tim Schilling was looking for volunteers for
Django Commons as well,
so
if you're interested at the Django level too.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of exciting projects coming up, and it's just such an opportunity to be an on-ramp for people who do want to get involved.
Now there's a question. At what point do Wagtail packages start making it into Django Commons?
It's funny you asked that, because I mentioned Wagtail Nest to Tim already, so it'll be interesting to see what direction things go. Good to see so many good people doing so many good things.
Okay. Thanks so much, Tim.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you, panel. Thank you very much. Thanks, everyone, for coming.
So we've got a little bit of time for lightning talks.
Yeah,
I'm
we'll
not
take
sure.
about 5 minutes to set up for lightning
Yeah,
talks.
so give us a minute to set up and we will
We'll be right back, Zoom people.